Good afternoon, good morning to those in America. I hope you had enough coffee, so everybody is still alive and up to listening to. This is a bit a special session because science diplomacy this whole week is a lot about theory. It's about cases. It's about how to achieve something. And today in this session, the main focus is on the people doing the science diplomacy, on the science diplomat. So because if you want to work on science diplomacy, that means you may want to become a real science diplomat. And we want to show you why this is something you should really try to become, why it's a wonderful job. Hello? And yeah, so we have invited three specialists of science diplomacy, the science diplomat, who will do most of the talking. Before I start introducing them to you, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that you can ask questions. At the end, we'll have about 15 minutes time to answer your questions. You can put your questions into the chat, and then I will choose which one we will answer. You can ask questions to all of the three panelists, or you can ask questions particularly to one of our three panelists if you want to. Good. So I start with introducing ladies first. Tanya Friedrichs. She is head of the Sector for Research and Innovation at the EU Delegation to India in New Delhi. She has been there for 5 years now and will, unfortunately, I guess, have to leave soon. She has worked for more than 15 years on EU research and innovation policy. So you can tell she's a very seasoned and noted science diplomat. She also worked once in Geneva, in my home country, for the EU delegation, and yeah, for GATT and WTO. She's a lawyer by training and has a law degree from Brussels and an LLM from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor in the United States. Then our next panelist is Dr. Bashkar Balakrishnan, who has been an Indian diplomat working in Europe, Africa, Middle East, and Latin America, including as an ambassador of India to Greece, Cuba, and Haiti. He also worked with UN agencies for a long time in Geneva and Vienna. He was educated at the Indian Institute of Technology in Kharagpur, Delhi University, and got a PhD from Stony Brook University in the United States. He is a fellow for science diplomacy at the Research and Information System for Developing Countries in New Delhi. So it's a coincidence that we have two people from New Delhi. Maybe it's not a coincidence because India is a top destination for science, and therefore we have two science diplomats from India. Then we go back to Europe, and the third panelist is Guillermo Ort Gill. He holds a PhD in physical chemistry from the Technical University of Berlin. He was an international delegate at the Embassy of Spain in Germany. That I would say he was the science diplomat at the Embassy of Spain in Germany. So he is a scientist turned diplomat. And then he went back into science, or it's a mixed form. He will tell more maybe. He works as a head of communications and public relations at the Institute for Bioengineering of Catalonia, the IBEC, in Barcelona. So we start with some first questions to our panelists. And the first two questions are, how did you become a science diplomat? And what are or were you doing as a science diplomat? And I would like to give the floor first to Ambassador Balakrishnan. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. A good afternoon to all of you and panelists. Great to be on this session. So your question about how I became a science diplomat. Basically, I started off studying theoretical and particle physics and did my PhD in that field and was set for an academic and research career. But I had broader interests in other branches of science and engineering and international relations. So I felt at some point that a purely academic career in a limited domain would not be enough in life. And I looked for something that could make more of a difference to society and the world. So I took the entrance examination and joined the diplomatic service in my country in 1974. Luckily for me, at the early stage, I got involved in working on science-related issues in Geneva, and that continued thereafter. Now, a diplomat basically promotes countries' interests abroad, seeking benefits on political, security, economic, science and technology, cultural and social areas, and also has to work with the expatriate community and to engage with various local actors at all levels and domains. So that's what a diplomat does, basically. And in that field of science, you can do a lot. Now, on what I was doing as a science diplomat, well, as I said in my early stage, I was in Geneva, and there was a lot of science-related work going on, from arms control discussions in the Committee on Disarmament, health-related issues in the WHO, technology transfer discussions in UNCTAD and WIPO, and then the law of the sea, where I was actually in the Committee on Marine Pollution and Scientific Research. So there was a rich variety of work on science and technology there in Geneva. And then, of course, I had the opportunity to work in Vienna, where I was very much involved in setting up the International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology, which is based in Trieste and New Delhi, and also a number of green industry activities, such as recycling of chrome waste from leather industry clusters, converting foundries to natural gas. And then, of course, in my different assignments, bilateral assignments, I was involved in working. I took a lot of interest in working on science and technology cooperation with countries like Syria, Zambia, Austria, Cuba, and Greece in various fields. So there's a lot of things I could do as a science diplomat. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So next on my list is Tanya Friedrichs.
Thank you very much, Christina. Thank you for the nice introduction, and good morning to those wherever you are. Good afternoon to wherever you are. And I think for us, but for India, as from 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it is good evening anyway. I don't know where you got that from, but anyway, so we cover everybody. And yes, how and what, right? And also, I will also reply, I could tell so much, but I will a bit reply in function of these young diplomats that you are part of your group. And if given my age, I can also transfer some of my experience to them. I don't know if I'm really a diplomat. I mean, that has several meanings, but because first of all, I work for the European Union, the European Commission, and not for what we have by now also our external services action, EEAS, which is by now 10 years. Those people, if they are posted abroad, would be more qualified as diplomat as me. But of course, once I am in the delegation of the European Union, I am also working under the umbrella of the external affairs action. But how of course, and since I am here in India, I absolutely, my work is 100% diplomatic work. But how I ended up in India as a lawyer, unlike Professor Bashkar, who is the top of all the scientists in particle physics, it is a bit by accident, in the sense that I had worked for several years, as you said, first on trade policy, then on research policy. So I thought it's time for me to change. And I said to my hierarchy, I wanted to have different horizons. And then the post in India became free, and they said, would you like to go as in India. And I said, India? Never thought about that opportunity. But yeah, I got 24 hours to decide. And I thought this is an opportunity that will never come back. So I said yes. And my first message is that then, of course, I had to combine my activities here at the delegation as a diplomat, but at the same time, and I think more and more so, all the diplomats are just more than representation. You need, and I think I would like to say that to the younger students, you need knowledge, you know, you cannot sell your product or your ideas or whatever if you don't know it. So you need good knowledge of your product. And because I had worked 15 years on EU research and innovation policy, I did more or less know what we had. And then so that is important. Then the second thing, what I'm mostly doing here is, in the first place, is information gathering. It's intelligence gathering. Because we do want to cooperate with India at EU level on science and technology. And by the way, if you look at all these summits, all the high-level meetings, the latest example, I don't know if you will include that in your diplomacy days, but if you look at the statement of the G7, it's so interesting. It's everything we want to do has an external dimension. And so it is a good combination, and it is also something that I have always felt like if I worked on trade policy or something else, and even already as a student, I always felt like there's a problem, there is an issue, there's a policy, you can't see it within your own borders. You have to consider the external dimension. You have to work with others. And from that point of view, retroactively, I do regret that, unlike Professor Bashkar, I haven't decided earlier to go for the really diplomatic career. So what I want to say is, I am not really from the diplomatic career, but I've had the opportunity twice, on the one hand for trade policy, to be posted in Geneva. And I liked it so much that I said, one day I want that again. And I couldn't have dreamt of a better position on science and innovation in India. But I am not a career diplomat. So it's better to be a career diplomat because lots of things go with it. And so that is me. And then what we mostly do is intelligence gathering. And especially, again, if I look at all these high-level meetings, today, what is topic number 2 of the agenda? Of course, first, it's always like policy, big political issues, trade, but linked to trade is technology. And that's where we come in. We have to say, where are the pockets of excellence? What can we do together and how can we do it? And that is mostly what I do. It's connecting Europe and India on cooperation on research and innovation to find solutions to tackle these challenges that we have. It used to be at EU level, it's now really at global level. And that's, the pandemic has shown how important that is.
Thank you very much, Tanya. I can subscribe fully what you said. Diplomat, that's the best job of the world.
Thank you.
Yeah, I chose my panelist wisely. I chose my panelist wisely, who share my opinion of enjoying being a diplomat also, because that's also the point. You have to enjoy what you're doing. And I think if you like people, if you like politics, if you like to improve situations, then working as a diplomat is the best you can. It's just wonderful.
Of course, if I look back at what I have done, I've also liked to work in the headquarters and work on a policy, yeah. But that external dimension and being a diplomat, and then in a country like India, I mean, you combine all that. I really, as I said, I couldn't have dreamt of a better position. And on science and policy, because India puts science very high on its agenda, is in the process of developing a fantastic science policy. So that's another task where we hope then to influence it, to say how we do it. You have the same objectives, we exchange ideas and all that. So it's wonderful, isn't it, Christina, that we doing something that you enjoy so much. But I think you have to do what Professor Bhaskar did. You have to make up your mind and say, let's do it. Let's go for the diplomatic exam and let's be in the pipeline as a diplomat. I've been it by, I call it accident or by luck twice, but I have no regrets on in between. But it is so fantastic. It is so rich. And I've only told you a little bit of what I'm doing. I wonder every day what I have done. You know, we keep being very, very busy. And I hope that our cooperation or contribution, so for Europe and for India, does make a difference. Of course, it's not the same to do that at European level compared to representing one country national. An additional dimension of diplomacy.
Good, thank you very much. So next is Guillermo, who will tell you his wonderful experience in Berlin.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Christina. And hello, everyone. Teresa, Trim, Florence, Marta, Bernardo, Valeria, Abby, Nivia, Surish, everyone. I see some names here and I'm very glad to see you and thank you for attending. I'm Guillermo Ort, and I'm a scientist by training. And my dad was a scientist and my mom also wanted to be a scientist. And why I became a science diplomat? By chance. And why not? I mean, if you were listening, Tania or Mr. Ambassador or Christina, it's a cool job. I mean, you can travel, you can meet interesting people, you can have an impact, you can try to find solutions to solve problems, you can learn a lot. And so why not? But if I can tell you something about my story, which is only a personal story, is that first point, I became science diplomat by chance. So it was not something I had in mind, but how I became a science diplomat. Maybe it's more interesting for you. I hope. So I studied chemistry. So at that time, I thought chemistry is the basis of everything. And this is what every chemistry professor tells you. It's all about chemistry. And then I studied international relations, and then was told to me, everything is about international relations, and so on and so on. You can go and go on this. I studied communication, and the professor said, it's all about communication. And it's always the same stuff. So in your field, you think your field is the center of everything. And at the end of the day, it's not like this, maybe. It's only that the most important is try to connect the dots. You connect the points. Communication is interesting. Relations are interesting. Chemistry is wonderful, but also culture and also the dancing and music and everything. So for me, to become a science diplomat was a chance, an opportunity to connect the dots of things I was interested in. And it was my chance. And I enjoyed it a lot. I was doing this for 3 years. And yeah, for me, it was this opportunity to connect the dots of interesting things and also try to find solutions to some issues which were important for my country at that time. So I don't want to explain more, but I hope we can discuss further. And thank you very much for being there. And I hope we are able to convince you this is not only a cool job, but also a very important job. And when you can serve other people, okay, in a public service, as a public service.
Thank you very much, Guillermo. Yes, public services is an important part of it. Yeah. Okay, so we go to the next question, which is what is needed to become a science diplomat? We have already covered this a bit, so maybe you give some more other informations. And what is helpful to become or to be a diplomat? This was already a bit touched upon, but anyway, maybe you can go a bit more into details. And first, maybe we have Tanya answering this second questions, please.
So it depends, of course, where you are a diplomat, but forgive me, Professor Bhaskar, but if you're a diplomat in India, one big characteristic or quality you need is patience. But that goes together with being a diplomat. I mean, you explain your point, and I also think, and I regret sometimes that I hear and see many diplomats that don't have that skill. You need good communication skills because, I mean, if you go up the ladder, but also at your level, you will have to represent your country or your organization or your region, however you have to do it. And there's a lot of communication, and it is important that you do have a fluent knowledge of, I guess, everywhere more or less English. And then, of course, if you also know the local language that is not so relevant for India, that may help. So I would definitely insist very much on communications skills and presenting, and so the language, the patience. I also mentioned that these days diplomatic work is just more than representing and going around and just say, I represent that, and you go from one cocktail to another. It's hard work. You need to know what you talk about, why you talk about it, and what you want to achieve. So good knowledge as well. You need, as I try to say, you need to know your product because you want to convince the other to work with you, and why and how. So and also, I mean, a good knowledge of your own culture, that you can share ideas and experiences from your own culture. That is mostly in the diplomatic circle also very much appreciated. You have to be broader than just your field. But often, and that is what makes it so nice to be a science diplomat, you do meet more than in every field area. At least I have seen that people that have such a broad knowledge. And that is why among being a diplomat for trade, for political science, for other areas, being a science diplomat is a very, brings you to so many interesting stakeholders, people, knowledgeable, wanting to find a solution to a problem and bring these dots, as Gauss was saying, together.
Thank you very much. I give the floor now to Guillermo.
Hi. And what do you need to become a diplomat? Well, I think there is not only one kind of diplomat. So there are different types of diplomats. And I'm not a very academic guy. I come from academy, but there is a concept behind science diplomacy, which is maybe it's good to explain. And science diplomacy is not like a stone, a block, a massive thing, close and not porous. So it means science diplomacy has like two sides, two hands. One is science for diplomacy, and the other is diplomacy for science. And I think this is interesting because you can be a diplomat who is working more in science for diplomacy. So you are an expert in science, and then your country needs you to achieve a concrete goal. So the first science diplomat in the history, I think it was an American guy in the late 1800th century, who called Stiles, who was sent to Berlin. Okay, because the United States had a problem with a pork, a disease, and the export of meat. So they sent this guy, a microbiologist, to Germany. So this was the example of a science diplomat who was working in science for diplomacy. He had to show that this meat was in good quality and that you could buy this from Germany, from the States to Germany. Okay, but you can also work, on the other hand, in diplomacy for science. So you are more expert in diplomacy and you want to use your skills to improve science or technology situation in your country, to foster collaborations, and so on and so on. So I don't want to go to another topic. The question here is, what do you need to be a science diplomat? Of course, Tania is absolutely right. You need good communication style and skills. You need to be passionate. You need to be empathic, of course. And but I think there is not only one profile. I mean, you can be an excellent science diplomat if you have these skills or these skills. But for me, the only very, very, very important skill you cannot maybe buy or learn is to be open. I mean, you have to be an open-minded person. Otherwise, you cannot be a science diplomat. Okay, the diplomats are not like in the 15th century, only protecting the reputation of your country. No, it doesn't work anymore. You have to be open. You have to speak to everyone. You have to be open for ideas, to collaborations, to different points of views, different cultures. And I think this is probably the central skill you need to be very, very open-minded. This is for me, at least. All the other things, you can learn them. You can make a master in communication or whatever, international relations. But if you're not an open person, it's my opinion, it's difficult that you can become a science diplomat. So it sounds simple, but I was thinking about this yesterday, and maybe it's something very important. And young people, normally you are very open, which is good. I mean, maybe it's easier to become a science diplomat where you are younger and you are not like me or I don't know, 60, 70 years old. So it may be your chance now.
Okay, thank you very much. I agree with you, to be open, to be curious, to want to know how to meet other people. You never know, you go somewhere, you never know who you're going to meet. Maybe you really meet someone who is very important, who can help you, or you can help him. And you cannot say, oh, I don't go there because that's interesting, or that's not the level of people I want to meet. You have to just be open and go enjoy, and then you have a good life, and you will always not fall on people, but meet people who you say, oh, that's really good because he is really helpful, or she is very helpful. And yeah, so now we have Ambassador Balakrishnan, who has a very long career and can certainly also contribute some very interesting aspects to these questions.
Thank you. Yeah, what do you need to become a science diplomat? I think it's a very diverse range of things which can help you. Firstly, a background in science at any level is useful, but this is not absolutely essential. You can pick up knowledge of some science, technology, innovation areas in natural sciences, life sciences. That will be useful. You can, if you have not studied it, you can always learn it. Interest in science and technology and international relations, that's important. The ability to keep learning by yourself, because in diplomacy, you never stop learning. And then to seize the opportunities when they arise for building science, technology, innovation, cooperation, either in bilateral or in the multilateral context. You have to have some knowledge of the basics of international relations, international law, diplomatic practice, politics and economy. and at least some foreign language skills and of course communication skills. Now, most university degree programs are flexible enough to cover quite a few of these areas. But nowadays you have the great advantage. You have online course material, which is a great help in acquiring and filling any knowledge gaps that you have. Diplomacy, as I said, is a lifelong learning experience. You never stop learning. Now, I'll come to another feature of the present day, at least since the 1950s. What has happened is governments are now playing a big role in science and technology compared with in the pre-war years where mostly it was labs and universities were involved. Now governments are playing a big role, especially in funding major projects. So this has created a big need for experts in science policy, in project and program management, evaluation of projects, and communication to stakeholders. So these are all areas which are sort of connected in some way with science diplomacy skills, but there's a demand for people with these expertise, not just scientists who are working in the labs, but you need people who can, you can manage a project or manage a program, you can write up a good proposal and then communicate to stakeholders. So you need people with expertise in science and other disciplines such as management. Now let's look at Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe, which is a major program. Now what has happened is that there is a whole ecosystem of consultants which have come up in order to help science groups to formulate projects and promote them. So, you know, you may not be formally a science diplomat, but there are many opportunities for working in science diplomacy. You may get an opportunity to work as a science attaché for your country, or you may get a chance to work in the science ministry, in the science policy. So, you know, it's not just about only being a science diplomat employed by the foreign ministry. There are many opportunities around. So I think you have an interesting time ahead in this field. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So now we would have time to answer questions. And I don't see any questions on the chat. So we continue. We're talking on our side. Okay, so I would like to know from you, what was your best moment in diplomacy? Was it maybe it's a success story or whatever? What was the best time or you remember when you think about, oh, I'm a diplomat, I was a diplomat, and then what comes to your mind? That was a great moment. And we start with Guillermo. You can, excuse me, so just a second. To the students, now we get some questions. You can write down questions. Okay, yeah. But first we answer this success story thing. Guillermo, sorry.
No worries. Well, I had a lot of good moments, many good moments. Because as I said, if you enjoy people and relations and to connect the dots, an embassy is a place where one day you have an exhibition about science and arts, and next day you have a delegation of people working on export of some track or wherever. Okay, so a lot of good moments, but I remember especially maybe three who were a talent competition. From Germany, which is called, and this is a very nice competition. This is Falling Walls. It's a conference in Berlin, and there are ideas breaking the walls of different things, breaking the walls of poverty, breaking the walls of infections or whatever. So we were able to bring this competition to Spain, and then the winners of the competition could travel to Germany. I enjoy really a lot bringing these people from Barcelona and from Madrid to Germany, to Berlin, who was my city at that time, Berlin. And that was a good example. Or going to schools and speaking to children and building up a program of scientists going to school, to Spanish-speaking schools. But the highlight for me, and I think that was the added value, that the best thing we did at that time was to bring people, clinicians, medical doctors from a hospital in Barcelona to Germany to meet German doctors and try that they work together in a new therapy for leukemia, for cancer. Okay, and this therapy at that time was not available in Germany. This is called CAR T immunotherapy. Okay, and that was only available in the United States at that time. So we tried to bring the Spanish clinicians and the German clinicians together to develop the first European CAR T therapy. And okay, we were organized a couple of meetings and traveling and events, and it didn't happen at that time. But only 3-4 months ago, this group at the hospital in Barcelona, they were able to really obtain the accreditation for the first CAR T therapy for leukemia. Okay, and not only in Spain but also in Europe. Okay, and I think it's not only my story. This is a story of many people working together trying to achieve a goal. And I was lucky to be a small part of this story. And this is the story I'm more proud about, because I think this is a very serious problem, and also many young people are dying with leukemia. And that was for me my highlight. I really felt I added some value to a success story and with value to people. So.
Wonderful. Congratulations, Guillermo. So can I give the floor to you, Ambassador, please?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Some good moments in science diplomacy. Well, I recall having worked in Vienna with our colleagues in UNIDO and other countries on negotiations to set up the International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology. So this was a major science project, and the third world countries really wanted to access this new technology which was coming on the horizon. And so they wanted an international center where this latest science of genetic engineering, they could access it for their own good. And of course, the world leader in that field was the United States. And some of the countries which had the technology were not very much interested in this setting up an international center. So we had our battles to really set it up. And I got involved in the negotiations for finalizing the agreement, as well as being on the board of the center, the newly center, which was just being born like a baby. And it was a fascinating experience. And today the center is 40 years old. It has headquarters in Delhi and Trieste, and one in Cape Town. At that time, India was the one country which provided the land, and Italy provided also the facilities. So we partnered with Italy on that. And it's now 40 years old, and it's still going well. And perhaps it will have a role to play in the future pandemic and health control, as well as food and nutrition. So that was a great opportunity for me. UNIDO also trying to set up other science centers, like International Center for Hydrogen Energy Technology and International Center for Science, which is now part of UNESCO, and it's also in Trieste. But, in some of these centers really did not succeed for various reasons, which is again an interesting thing to study. So then I got back to Delhi around 1999, and I had the opportunity to actually set up a new division in the Foreign Ministry dealing with investment and technology promotion. Because at that time, the Foreign Ministry was more focused on investment and trade promotion, and they had not really focused on technology promotion in the usual way. They had left it more to the science departments. So I found it a very interesting experience to set up this body in the Foreign Ministry, and we got involved in promoting IT cooperation, ICT. At that time, India was doing a lot in the year 2000, and we emerged with a national IT policy as a major player in the IT sector, energy, health, etc. My third interesting experience was when I served in Cuba, which had a strong biotechnology center. And there I got the opportunity to promote a joint venture with the Cuban laboratory and an Indian company to make monoclonal antibodies for head and neck cancer. And this was a product which was being developed by Cuba, and they had tried it out and it had good results. I was really very happy to get this collaboration going, and actually saw a whole plant come up in Bangalore to manufacture these antibodies, not only for India, but for export to other countries and for treatment of head and neck cancer, which is, gliomas are pretty deadly cancers. So I was very happy to be part of that. So that is some of the nice moments I had working as a science diplomat. Back to you, Christina.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And now we have Tanya for this question.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I have only been a science diplomat for the EU in Delhi. So my, although I have always worked on the external dimension of the research policy, because as Balakrishnan was saying, you don't only have to see working science as being an attaché or counselor in an embassy, but for example, what I have also done before I came to India was working with what we call in Europe the countries that have expressed an interest or to become a member state. So that was at that time the Balkan countries and Turkey, and I went a lot to these countries, and I tremendously enjoyed explaining the importance of research that it took on the EU political agenda, the way we did it, and the exchanges with their policy, and trying to convince them, trying to convince them to align their policy to our policy. So that is certainly one part, or another illustration of what science diplomacy can be, because it was science diplomacy because we felt that by allowing these countries to become familiar and engaging in research and innovation between Europe and the Balkans, people would get familiar with each other and understand each other and get insight and be also more tolerant and open to them. So I like the way that I could contribute to that overall objective. I have also been invited by here in India while I was here by the Department of Biotechnology when there were the Science Days in Lucknow, where I was asked to speak also on my role as science. And when I left the room, I had like 100 students, kids almost, around me because it was youngsters. And they showed me things, they had ideas, and they asked if that would be something that was good, or if I could help them, or if there would be projects, or if there would be. So it was very good to see that maybe my enthusiasm had sprung to theirs, and they came around me and asked for more information. To see the enthusiasm of the younger people for creation, for science, that gives you a good feeling. And a third point, since everybody seems like to give 3 little points, more on substance, also while I was in India, is after lots of discussions and waiting and not happening and then happening, is that we managed to set up a project between Europe and India on and putting institutes together for the next generation of vaccines for influenza, for the flu. And there again, as Balakrishnan was saying, it's better to be a scientist, it helps, but you can learn. And I don't pretend that I have understood everything, but I got myself so fascinated about development of vaccines, trials, how to do the trials, on whom, the procedures, the strains that were needed, the complementarity, the whole chain, the duration. And all that was because they said 2.5 years ago that a pandemic because of influenza was not to be excluded. So I really started to think like, oh, we're doing something extremely good for humanity, and please get together and find this new generation of vaccine for the influenza. And people were kind of saying, why influenza and a pandemic? Don't you think that is no history and all that. And now we are faced with a pandemic, and I learned so much, and I'm so grateful that we could set up that project and all I learned, and that has helped me to understand the challenges of the current pandemic, and I could repeat that knowledge and again bring India and Europe together and many more to combat together the COVID-19. So learning curve definitely is part of what I have also very much liked in my job, but in doing so also I really will follow that project if ever we come up with a next generation vaccine for influenza, because that is still necessary despite all the vaccines we need for COVID. And so that's something that I'm very, very proud of, that I worked hard really to make that happen. And there was a lot of questions, was very, very difficult because clinical trials and all that, and we did it. So I'm very happy about that.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Now I'm happy to see that there are lots of questions in the chat. And I would like to suggest the following. We would end in 2 minutes. If the panelists have time for 10 more minutes until 3:30, I would suggest we continue until 3:30 and then have the 10 minutes break. And afterwards, it's me moderating an after session anyway. So we would start the after session at 3:40, but I have to leave at 4 o'clock. I'm sorry, I have to pick up my husband who is undergoing eye surgery. So we would just prolong this session and then shorten the next one, if everybody is fine. Then my second suggestion is the following. I have here a question to you, Ambassador. Quickly, I would like to ask the other 2 panelists to look through the chat and pick a question or the questions they would like to answer. Is that okay? Are you okay with that? Good.
Yeah.
So the question to you, Ambassador, is what would you advise to a senior scientist with experience in management and communication who would like to engage in science diplomacy? Is it recommended to enroll in a Master on Diplomacy or International Affairs? Would online classes be enough and officially recognized? This is from Valeria, I don't see the whole name, Petoria.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Valeria, for this question. No, certainly online courses you can benefit from. I don't think it matters that much whether they are recognized or not. What matters is the knowledge you get from it. And then you should participate in programs on science diplomacy, which might come up in Europe, because the S4, D4C and the others are, there is a whole science diplomacy alliance emerging in Europe. And under Horizon Europe, I'm sure there will be, follow-up projects involving science diplomacy. So you should get involved in that. And by all means, you should write papers on whatever interests you in science diplomacy. We in RIS, we have a journal which we are trying to promote and make it an international journal called Science Diplomacy Review. And we'd be very happy to receive any papers from participants here on science diplomacy. So you publish some papers, you write something on science diplomacy, and you look for all opportunities available to get involved in science diplomacy. It's hard to say, formally joining a ministry may be difficult on a career basis because, most foreign ministries, they take people through an entrance process. But there would be opportunities, for example, to work as a science attaché. For example, your country might be looking for somebody to work as a science attaché in Russia or somewhere. In our country, that happens from time to time. We issue calls to people to apply for these jobs. So that would give you an opportunity to work within an embassy in science diplomacy for a period of 3 years and so on. And maybe you can go on from that. So there are a lot of these opportunities. Acquire the knowledge you need of science diplomacy, do some writing about that. Of course, maintain your career as a scientist. Don't give it up for something which is not that sure. And I'm sure you'll find your way out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Guillermo, have you chosen another question to answer?
Yeah, I see here a question about what kind of courses I attend. after my, let's say,
Yes, you have.
Scientific studies. And yeah, the first course I attended was about project management, and it was a short course. And then I was enrolled in many different short courses, which for me at least were better than to enroll in a master to be an expert in concrete stuff. So I did a course in cultural diplomacy in a school in Berlin, a school for cultural diplomacy, project management, communication, all of them short courses, and all related to science and to international relations. I mean, because at the end, diplomacy, in my opinion, there is a lot about international relations. So you have to get introduced in how countries communicate to each other, how institutions work and get together. And if you come from academia, you need some introduction. That's it. But I think at the end of the day, as my colleagues said, I think it's also learning by doing. So you are in a, you are there, not necessarily in an embassy, but you are in a, I don't know, UNESCO, United Nations, or Central, I don't know, European Bank or whatever, and you work in some kind of diplomacy. And I think it's not so much different, the diplomacy you do in science diplomacy sometimes as the diplomacy in cultural diplomacy or other areas. So for me, the conclusion is the same as before, to keep open and to try different things, to take a taste of this and this and this. And if you need to be a little bit lucky, of course, as Mr. Balakrishnan told you, to become a science attaché or a science diplomat is not that easy, in the sense there are not thousands of positions. But why not? If you have the chance, just get these appetizers from different international relations courses, management, communication, or whatever you like, and then try to learn by doing. It was my case, but everyone has a different story, of course.
Thank you very much, Guillermo. Tanya, have you found a question to answer?
Yes, thank you. I picked up one question that I meant to have said, because, I mean, rightly so, except Ambassador Balakrishnan we said that we became science diplomats by accident, or it's rather by chance, I would say. And would we do differently? And I think I have no regrets, and I'm about to retire end of the year. And if I look back, I mean, I've been blessed with the variety of experience that I had, and it reflects a bit like the road not taken. I mean, imagine the evening that somebody said to me, if you want to change horizons, you go to India. You want to go to India. And I had not in mind at all India. I wanted another policy because I had done trade research. So I thought, I know that. But somebody says to me, okay, other horizons, which is also normal. You want to go to India now. If I had said no because of personal reason, whatever reason, I mean, my life would be totally different. So it is good not to plan everything and also take opportunities as they come. And at the end, you will end up with a nice mixed bag. You need a bit of luck, but if and all that. But having said that, from all the jobs that I have done, I was trade policy in Geneva and science diplomat in India. If I had gone for the career diplomat, I think, yes, that is definitely what I would recommend. You know, at a certain time, you have to make up your mind. And because even as a science diplomat, you do need the skills of a diplomat, and that you need to learn as well. It's very stupid things, but it's like what is a non-verbal, what are the public relations, what is said, what is not done, and all that. And because if I had been by career, which does not exist in the same extent at EU level as it exists in the member states, then I could have gone what I have done in India. I could have built up and do in Korea. I could have done it in, I have a colleague that has done it in Russia. And if you then get all these rich experiences as a diplomat, and in some countries, science diplomacy is more combined or closer to a trade portfolio, or it's closer to an innovation portfolio. Here, because in India, science is so high on the agenda, we do focus, and it's complex enough. And I'm happy that I can focus on bringing scientists from Europe and India mostly together. But don't be afraid to make choices. I haven't, and everything rolled out well for me. But I think choosing for a career as diplomat, you have to be prepared for changing environments, but it is enriching, and so I would definitely recommend to do that. Linked to that question was also a question about gender, and here in India it's no issue. I mean, also in Geneva, where I worked in trade policy, no issue. I mean, I have never encountered it. It does happen that I have been to meetings where mostly women and female men scientists, but I don't see this as an issue. And generally there is a balance. And wherever I go, I can give the example. I've been on mission to Saudi Arabia, because that was only on a mission basis, and everybody said, as a woman on science, that's impossible. I had the best treatment ever. They were very nice and talked to me. I could see how women are treated. That was less nice, but vis-a-vis me, this was not a problem. So I think if you are yourself and you know again, I insist very much on that, you know what you're talking about and the message you want to bring over, you will be respected, and you respect as well.
Thank you very much. Sometimes it's even easier as a woman in some societies and some places. So I would like to ask Ambassador, you couldn't choose, if you also want to choose the last question to answer.
Yes, okay. Let me take the question of women in science diplomacy. I happen to think that women enjoy some advantages in diplomacy. Firstly, women are more empathic. They have more empathy, and they have a greater ability to listen, which is one of the very important things of a diplomat, to listen to what others are saying. And the other great advantage is, in most countries, a woman diplomat is much easier for them to make contacts with all the women in that host country, women's organizations and so on. They are much more willing to open up with a woman diplomat. For a male diplomat, it is a little more difficult. There are many societies where this is difficult because of cultural reasons. But for a woman diplomat, half the population of a country you can deal with more effectively. So I think that for women science diplomats, they do have a better advantage. I might not be fair to men, but that's my personal view. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So I think it's 3:30 now. We did 60 minutes, 10 minutes extra. We finish here. Thank you very much to all the three of you panelists. It was very interesting for me, and certainly also for our students. And I hope we will sometime meet in Vienna or so, or online some place. Thank you so much. You were the best panelists I could imagine for my panel. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
In New Delhi, in Barcelona, or wherever your life will lead you in the next future, and stay safe. To the students, we will meet in 10 minutes.
But I would also like to thank you, Christina, and the organization to organize that on science diplomacy, because it is still a new field. It's not so well known, and there is many more ways to fill it in. So it's very good that you're doing that. We have only filled in one part, but there's so many variations of science diplomacy. So it's very good you bring that to the attention of the young people, that is a potential. So thank you for doing that. We at European level, we believe very much in science diplomacy as a way to bridge. And there's so much bridging to be done in the world.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all the participants for so many questions, which really shows their high interest in the subject. And if they would like to send me an email with any questions, I'll be happy to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Good. Thank you. Guillaume,
Bye-bye.
you want to say? Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.